Welcome to the African International Mediation Week 2020 and Strategy Conference. Today is the first day of December in the year 2020, and we are hosting the evening session, which is with the Mediation Beyond Borders International. The session today will be with Ms. Lisa Rose of Mediators Beyond Borders and Ms. Dorina Prech, who is the core team leader of the MBBI Kenya team, and it's hosted at 4:30 p.m. The African International Mediation Week is the annual event for mediators and dispute resolution professionals in Africa. I welcome you to this session. Have a good listening in. Can come to you. Okay. Thank you very much to our guests for today, who are from Mediation Beyond Borders International. And we are delighted because also we have one of our own who is from Kenya, who is part of the team to let us know more about Mediation Beyond Borders. So today is the first day of December 2020, and this is our 4:30 p.m. in the evening session on an international seminar on professional visibility while in private practice. And we have this seminar with the Mediation Beyond Borders International, USA. Our topic of today is about Mediation Beyond Borders International, which commonly is referred to as MBBI, the work of MBBI in Kenya and Africa, and also for mediators, especially how to become a member. So our session facilitator, as we conclude the session, will be Christine Kipsang. She will help to summarize the discussions for today and also give us the closing. So our international speakers from the Mediation Beyond Borders International, we have Lisa Rose, who is from MBBI USA. We have Ms. Dorina Prech, who is the core team leader for the MBBI team in Kenya. And you'll be delighted to know that in 2019, she was the Peacemaker of the Year for her efforts in Kenya on peace building and pastoralist voices advocacy. So we are delighted to have you on the call. And Lisa, over to you. And when you're concluded with the presentation, you'll kindly hand over to Christine Kipsang. Thank you. Karibu sana.
Okay. First off, we're delighted to be joining you today. When we were contacted a few weeks ago, just thrilled with the invitation because we're really happy to share more about Mediators Beyond Borders and also to tell you about the work that we're doing in Kenya and how there are opportunities for collaboration in a wide variety of our Mediator Beyond Border programs. So looking forward to telling you more about us and taking any questions you might have from us. And Dorina is going to be kicking off. And before we start, I'll just tell you, I'm Lisa Rose. I'm originally from the United States. I've been living in Northern Ireland since 1993. So it's over half my life now. So I'm a bit of a hybrid. I feel mostly Irish now, I think. I got into mediation because I came to a country that was in a conflict, and having no experience of living in a conflicted society, I suddenly became really involved in working with young people, policing, and with political actors, and helping people navigate conflict in communities and between institutions and communities, etc. So it happened to me by accident, but I loved it. And now I work in the Council of Europe for a variety of countries, usually with marginalized communities, helping them mediate within their community, but also to mediate and interact more positively with education systems and institutions. So that's the bulk of my work now, and always around alternative dispute resolution, restorative justice, and mediation. So that's my background, and I'm going to hand you over to the lovely Dorina.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I don't know at some point whether you want to put up the PowerPoint or I'll do that. Okay, all right, so thank you, everybody. My name is Dorina Prech. I am a Kenyan, currently living and working in Nairobi with an institution called the Frontier Counties Development Council. You've probably heard about it. It is one of the regional economic blocks that were formed by the counties after devolution. And basically, these are 10 counties from northern Kenya working on addressing common challenges. One of being peace and security. As you probably know, if you're Kenyan, that the North is very synonymous with violence and conflict. So our role is really to see how we can find solutions to our local problems, local solutions, and to be able to address them through policy, legislations, and also just developing programs that are going to address the underlying factors. So that is my current work. But with Mediators Beyond Borders, I have been a member since 2012, right after college. And of course, I think we'll talk about it a bit more, but being volunteering as a peace builder, mainly drawn out of my interest for peace and security, particularly in the pastoralist regions of Kenya. As I come from West Pokot, you probably also know that we are also known for the wrong reasons. So that kind of was a motivation for me to be able to be trained as a peace builder. So I did my bachelor's and currently doing my master's in the same field, to be able to see how to use my skills and expertise and experiences, lived experiences, to be able to address insecurity issues through mediation and other techniques, to be able to have sustainable peace and development in the region. So that is me in short. I think now we'll go into detail to talk about MBBI and our work in Kenya. So what I'll do is I will start, and then Lisa will come in at some point. But just to kick us off and to say, Mediators Beyond Borders International is an international organization, as the name suggests, of mediators. And I think we have a 1-minute video. Lisa, are you able to click that? Just for 1 minute, it will take us to the link. Somehow the volume isn't working.
Borders International.
Sorry, the volume isn't working. Can you hear it?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay. Can everybody else hear it? A thumbs up if you can hear it? No? Okay.
Build local skills for peace building and mediation worldwide. We create the soil for peaceful cohabitation, to prevent and resolve violent conflict, to bring healing and reconciliation, to equip local peace builders and change makers all around the world. We do this through different creative methods: problem solving, creating meaningful connections, non-violent communication, restorative circles, negotiation, collaboration, mediation, working with local grassroots organizations, creating connections, a sense of community and trust to change the current violent narratives globally. We have achieved a lot. Leaders' lives were saved. Combatants were safely reintegrated into their village. Women prevented violence at elections in their countries. Students were trained to be peacemakers. Doctors saw better health outcomes for children. But we have so much more to achieve. Anyone can be a peace builder. Your commitment, dedication, and investment makes the difference. Become a part of an international network of peace builders from over 120 countries, taking action to build a more peaceful world.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so just going back to the slides now. As you've seen from that 1 minute clip, is that we are a global network of peace builders, and our mission is really to be able to build local skills for peace and to promote mediation worldwide. So the center, as you can see, is really at the idea of using the local people to be able to build peace in their own contexts. And our approach is really emphasizing on the idea of inclusivity, that everybody needs to be involved in terms of peace building, that it's not just a men thing, it's not a government thing, it's communities, it's women, it's youth who actually have the power to be able to be involved in it. And also cultural competency, that we need to be able to understand the context in which we go about, to respond to peace issues by understanding the culture and, the people that you're working in. We also emphasize a lot on collaboration. So we go into a country, but not as individuals, but we go in when, local people have called in for a specific need. But also when you're there, you're not working alone as a volunteer or as an NGO, but looking at, can we bring in the other actors? Can we work with government? Can we work with other civil society organizations? And then also the idea of sensitivity to the impact of trauma on communities. I think oftentimes when peace builders go into places, we don't look at the history and the accumulated trauma that has been caused as a result of conflicts. And so therefore, we want to say we are going to address peace and security issues in a holistic manner, where we have different people who are part of the network involved in different disciplines. And they say we bring in our skills and expertise to be able to address peace building and its intersections now, for example, with the economy, with the environmental issues, with education, with health, and so many other sectors. And so that is who we are. Let's move on. Yeah, so just to emphasize, the mission is to be able to build local skills for peace and to promote mediation. And our vision is to be able to build a more peace-able world. That peace is possible, right? Move on next, Lisa. So as a network, as you've heard, of course, at the heart of our work is collaboration. And this is clearly evident in the membership and the kind of things that we engaged in, which we'll talk about. So we have about over 300 volunteers. As you say, it's a volunteer network organization of people who are passionate about peace building and mediation. We have 50 plus international consultants who commit over, I think, thousands of their hours, into this work. We are spread across 120 countries across 6 continents. And so far we've had very successful international peace conferences, 9 of them. The last one was last year in Bali, in Indonesia. Talk about that. And then we have what you're calling regional groups, 6 of them. And we have 6 active project teams, mainly in the countries. And I'll talk about that also in the next slide. So the core of MBBI is capacity building and advocacy. So building the capacity of local people to be able to address peace and security in their contexts, and also advocacy, having the voice to be able to speak about peace and security issues. So now going into our country programs and the projects that are currently running, I said 6 of them. So we have 1 in Kenya, which I'll go into detail later on. But basically in Kenya, we are looking at the pastoralist areas and see how mediation and peace building can be embedded in the peace building processes that happen in the pastoralist areas of Kenya. So I'll talk about our projects in Laikipia and Baringo in a sec, but just move on to the others. And then we have Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, we probably know that Sierra Leone has been, for years, in the 90s up to late 2000s, was involved in civil war. And so there was a lot of violence and killing of people. And then, about 4 years ago, there was a border crisis. I think there was some mudslides in the capital, Freetown. And so all these issues led people to be very disorganized, and there are a lot of trauma issues. So what we are working on in Sierra Leone is look at the leadership and how we can use leadership to go about transforming conflicts in Sierra Leone. And it's actually one of the longest projects that we have. I think it's about 12 years now. And the team has achieved quite a lot. And I think I don't want to go into the details. You can look about it on the website. Just to move on to the other country of Colombia. So this is in South America, the same situation in South America, that we are dealing with an indigenous group, an Afro-Colombian community in Colombia. And these people were displaced by armed groups in the 2000s. And now they are returning back with a lot of trauma, with a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of violence and conflicts. So what you're doing is to be able to do the reintegration of these people and to address the issue of trauma and healing, building the capacity of women to be able to do some of the trauma, trauma-informed peace building work. And it's also very successful. And now we're looking at also now expanding that into entrenching a lot of what we've done and scaling into the other Southern American countries. And just to also underscore that we were working very closely with Rotary clubs, as it is with many other countries. So Rotary is also another volunteer group that they are very keen on service and community service. So that is Colombia. And then we've got another country, Southeast Asia. We're working in a number of countries, Myanmar, we've got Thailand, we've got Indonesia. And these ones are dealing with also the same thing of, separatist groups. There's a lot of violent extremism. And in Myanmar, for example, we are working with ex-combatants, people who are involved in the wars and now they are coming back. So looking at how do we integrate them into the community and how do we use them as mediators and peace builders. The same thing with Indonesia. Indonesia is also dealing with decades of violence, and there are truth and justice and reconciliation commissions. So we want to be able to, so we were called in as Mediators Beyond Borders to be able to be part of the facilitation process in terms of people, going through the TJRC and explaining their problems. So there was need for that neutral mediator. So MBBI was called to do that. So those are some of the other areas, and there are other activities in Southeast Asia that you can read more about. And then you've got what we are calling democracy, politics, conflict, and or DPACE in short, which is an initiative that seeks to offer constructive alternatives to the destructive conflicts that undermine institutions' mission. So we work through partnering with and peace building practitioners who work on social impact groups, political organizations, communities, and experiences. And we have a whole resource hub for people who seek to organize and mobilize groups. It can be activists or local organizations. So they come in through DPACE to be able to get the resources and the tools that they need to be able to organize and to transform conflicts in their region. And then we have the climate change policy. And this one is, of course, is very high level at the United Nations level. And here we have, as MBBI, successfully managed to advocate for facilitation as a language, in the discussions that happen at the climate change conference. The use of the facilitation language, so MBBI was very keen on that, rather than the cutthroat, a lot of arguments that happen. And we are an observer, an official observer, in both the UNFCCC and the conference of the parties. So we are very keen, and we have a very strong group on climate change, and these are experts who have been working on climate change for a long time. So I think I'll now invite Lisa to talk about the ITI. Isn't that right, Lisa?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trina. Okay, alongside those projects that they're actually on the ground working, we have a number of other initiatives that happen all over the place, that they're not maybe country specific, they're more training specific. So I'm just gonna go over a few of those now. So I have to say, as a woman myself, I'm very delighted with the impact that Mediators Beyond Borders has had with assisting women to become more peace-able peace builders. I think Dorina actually went on one of the programs with Mary Montague, and it was about women in peace building. So it's a great initiative because oftentimes women get forgotten in some contexts as powerful influences in the peace process. So this is training offered specifically for women to help them in their communities on a more national or political level, and then internationally become more lobbyists and to raise the voice of women in a higher tiered environment. We also offer training in interfaith dialogue. So helping faiths find commonalities and beliefs and helping them to have a dialogue in the areas where maybe they're not in agreement, but to find the space for respect and collaboration. Because as often as in the case in Northern Ireland, religion is one of the fundamental conflict drivers in a lot of places around the world. So it's an important aspect that needs to be addressed. So there's training for that, and it's multi-faith, so it's not specific faith. So the materials and the methodology can be used no matter what faith you might be dealing with. It's not only for Abrahamic faiths or Asian faiths. It's a model that can work with anyone who has faith differences. And then environmental conflict management, which often has a kind of double layered or multi-layered on top of the normal layers of conflict issue around resources and protection of resources or destruction of resources. So there's a specific methodology for interventions in environmental issues. And that's a picture of a copper mine in Peru that was experiencing community, institutional, and corporate conflicts. So the aspect of all those many actors is an area that Mediators Beyond Borders has an awful lot of experience in. Also, there's a child and youth and alternative dispute resolution working group, which also kind of layers over into advocacy as well with young people. So advocacy of youth issues, as well as resolving disputes between young people and educational institutions, or young people and policing, etc. So there's a lot of experience in this area, particularly in a United States context, but I know it also has some application and has been used and modified in multinational contexts. So it's all about ADR, working with young people in communities and building their capacity, and also amplifying their voices to a higher level of decision makers and policy practitioners. And then the UN working group, the climate group that Doreen's already mentioned, also lobbies a lot on a UN level. But in addition, there's a UN level of security, sustainability, development goals, the status of women alongside the climate change lobbyists. And you'll see there in the middle of that picture, that's the current CEO of Mediators Beyond Borders, Prabhaseka Ranarayan. And she, I have to say, has been very involved in Kenya, has really supported the work there, remains 100% engaged in what's happening in Kenya. And I also believe she's probably like that with every country. I think she's got the energy that is unbeatable. So I know it's great to have her so involved in the stuff that we're doing in Kenya, but I also have a feeling she's like that with everyone. So it's great to have someone like her with the experience and the will and the energy as her at the top of this organization, helping us all move along and always there for advice and support. So I have to say, for us, she's been brilliant. As Dorina also said, Mediators Beyond Borders is very closely linked with the Rotary. So there's a special Rotary working group that was set up by MBBI, and they collaborate through developing ties to districts and clubs globally. So if the Rotary, which we're going to talk about in a minute, they have peace initiatives where they'll fund, they're called global grants. So MBBI lobbies and presents to districts and clubs and receives funding for peace projects around the world. So there's such a strong tie there and a lot of communication between MBBI and the Rotary Club all over the world. They train Rotarians in peace building, and they also engage in joint projects. And we're going to have a quick look at some of those right now. So some past Rotary Global grants are in Indonesia, reducing violence and strengthening civil society, and holding parties accountable through data and documentation. So you might be aware that there are, like a few other countries in Southeast Asia, there's some tensions between political ideologies, like all over the world, and faith beliefs as well. So Rotary funded a project there. Then there's Colombia, saving leaders' lives and healing indigenous communities from the stigma and trauma of sexual violence. I know this also overlaps somewhat with some of the political issues in Colombia with FARC ex-combatants and people who live in areas that were controlled by FARC during the height of the troubles there. So this initiative helped engage people and also had a lot to do with restorative justice and healing and dialogue. Then Sierra Leone, and these were all Rotary projects. Sierra Leone was building unity for peaceful elections and political tolerance through practical dialogue and peace building skills. So a bit like what needs to happen in my country and in a lot of countries, I think, or maybe Poland or Brazil, about helping people engage in the electoral process and express their differing ideologies in a more peaceful and practical and respectful way. Some new things that were just recently funded by the Rotary clubs. Some work in Pakistan to help train women in mediation and inclusive peace practices. So that will build on the training of women I mentioned a few minutes ago. The Ukraine, preventing and resolving community and family violence that's been exacerbated due to the war. It's not really covered a lot in the press, like a lot of things, but there are considerable border skirmishes and a lot of tension and stress for communities along the borders between the Russian Russian army and the Ukrainian army. So it's definitely had an impact on families, on poverty, and a really good project that's, I think, much needed. And then finally, West Africa, and that's to develop women and women peacebuilders and embed them in communities to more positively address conflict. So they're happening now or about to happen now, those 3 newly funded projects. And we're always working for new ideas. So always thinking of something new. We also have regional groups that exist, Mediators Beyond Borders regional groups. There's New York, Los Angeles, Europe. I'm a member of the European group, and we're only really just forming now. So hopefully you'll see some good things coming out of Europe soon. Canada, Oceania, and Turkey are all regional working groups. There's also trauma-informed peace building and development assistance from Mediators Beyond Borders. Okay, this is training and consultation on the impact of primary and secondary trauma. And as peace builders and as mediators, it's really important to understand both the psychological and physical impacts that trauma can have on people and their ability to engage in a peace process. And these things need to be addressed often before you really engage in more active peace building, but sometimes in a two-track way. So this is a kind of double mainstreaming approach of 2 issues, and it's about recognizing and addressing trauma in a more effective way. And we did some of that in the Kenya work. I know in the training we covered some of the impacts of trauma on individuals, and I know how important it is that is embedded when you're dealing with any kind of violent conflict, mediation and understanding between parties. So I think, and this is an area, and Dorina may add to that in her presentation on the Kenya work, but this is an area where Mediators Beyond Borders is very strong. Prabha's background would be, she was a psychiatrist, and she dealt with a lot of trauma issues when she was in a private practice. Prabha's the lady who was the president I mentioned earlier. And also there's a gentleman called Ken Cloak, who's one of the foremost kind of thinkers about trauma and its impact on people. So this is an area where I think we're particularly, alongside peace building, strong. Okay, as a reaction, it had been mentioned earlier that Mediators Beyond Borders is based in the United States, but I like to think of Mediators Beyond Borders as nationless and more of like an international organization that happens to have an office that's or happens to have started in the United States. But in response to what's happening in the United States, which I think probably got coverage in Kenya, I'm not sure, but in the UK and Ireland, it was on TV nonstop. So there was a lot of tension in the United States in the run-up to the last election that happened at the beginning of November. In response to this, the mediators and Mediators Beyond Borders in the United States really wanted to organize and try to come up with a way to help communities navigate the potential of violence in the within my country. And I mean, everybody knows about Black Lives Matters and initiatives like that. And all of the tension that was happening in the United States was something that that country is not really used to. So there was a lot of concern about how the general population and how the police and politicians were going to react to it. So they became a part of this thing called the Trust Network. So the Trust Network is a non-partisan group of national and international experts in early warning and early response mechanisms. So that it's including things like first notice on technology. There's a lot of apps now that help people communicate about where violence or conflict might be happening so that people can organize to try to intervene. So it's a local, regional, national, international network of conflict transformation, mediation, kind of cohesion, bridge building, restorative practice, and violence mitigation organization. So it's quite a huge number of people involved in the work of the Trust Network. So, and it's not just people from the United States who are in it. So it's great to have other practices and other perspectives as voices in the Trust Network. And it's an important thing. And it's one thing I personally have learned from being a part of Mediators Beyond Borders, that it's, you learn a lot about how to improve. I learn a lot about how to improve what I'm doing here in Europe from the stuff I've done in Kenya with Dorina. So it's very important. I think the sharing is a two-way thing with Mediators Beyond Borders, and this model, the Trust Network, really lives to that ethos. So members of the team have decades of combined experience in both election monitoring and disaster response. Some of them have been active members of the International Network of Crisis Mappers, while others are heavily involved in the Standby Task Force. Elections or disasters to which they responded have been in Kenya, Nigeria, India, the Philippines, Sudan, Pakistan, Colombia, the USA, Ecuador, Libya, and Syria. And I know from the earlier session and from conversations with my Kenyan friends that the election is coming up there. And so in the world that we live in today, the Trust Network might be of interest for you to look into it a bit more and see how they're doing it, and if you all can benefit from some of their activities and thought leaders. So MBBI also has consultants. So MBBI Consultant, sorry, I keep having to move my screen, provides collaborative services to companies, governments, financial institutions, and communities. So the parent company is MBBI, but the individuals are individual consultants. Dorina happens to be one of them, I'd like you all to know. And so they're an international network of practitioners. And now we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the work that we've been doing in Kenya, and Dorina is going to take over from here.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So I want to spend the next 5 minutes or so to talk about MBBI Kenya. So we started off, this is sort of a collage of some of the people who've been very much involved in the network. Some of them are familiar faces I can see. So let's just dig into it. That we started off in 2012. Lisa, if you can move to the next slide. We started off in 2012 when Lisa? Oh, Lisa is frozen.
Sorry, I'm on.
Okay, good. I was worried. Yeah, so MBBI Kenya started off in 2012 when one gentleman by the name of Lantano Nabala, who is a Samburu, reached out to MBBI International and basically asking for support in them coming into the country to see how to train particularly the communities of Laikipia, on peace building. And his interest was informed by events that had happened in the same county in 2009. There was this famous Kanampiu massacre where a number of people died, particularly from the Samburu and the Pokot ethnic groups who are living in Laikipia North, in Laikipia West. And the idea was that they didn't want a repeat of the same. And so what we did was two people came in from MBBI International, that was Caravan and Jeannie, and they came to listen to, to the story of Lantano and what he wanted. And Lantano took them to the remote villages of Laikipia, and they met with the 5 ethnic groups, that is the Pokot, Samburu, Turkana, Tugen, and Kikuyu. And so just move on to the next slide, and to basically be able to understand their desires. And so what happened was they brought together a group of us, professionals from these ethnic groups that I have mentioned, and we wanted to look at how can we have effective peace building approaches for pastoralist areas in Kenya. Because for a long time, we are the ones who are always fighting, particularly in resource-based conflict, inter-ethnic violence. So how can we develop a mechanism that actually pastoralists themselves are able to resolve disputes amongst themselves? And so we conducted an action research where we looked at the Laikipia Peace Caravan. You can just move on to the next slide. So we looked at the Laikipia Peace Caravan, which was a model that involved professionals from all the ethnic groups that I have mentioned going into Laikipia after the massacre. All right, so these are professionals who are working in the cities in Nairobi, and they said enough is enough. So let's see how we can end the conflict. And so the conflict did end, and there was peace between the Pokot and the Samburu. So here now, this research was looking at what actually led to that success of that caravan. What led to the success of this process that the professionals took in? So we identified what worked, we identified what was missing, some of the gaps. And then we said, based on the gaps, how can we develop an action plan that actually is filling those gaps? Now, this is what resulted into a framework that you're calling the Warriors to Peace Guidance Framework. But also just to give you a summary of some of the things that led to the success of the Laikipia Peace Caravan, for example, was the idea of professionals being engaged for the first time. This one was not, the Kenya police coming in. This was not NGOs who are mainly based outside coming in. These were people, sons and daughters of these communities coming in to camp in the bushes with their communities and to say enough is enough. And then the other thing was, this was also the first time when women were actually at the center and they were involved in the peace building process and speaking about their hearts and what was making them suffer as a result of their boys and sons and husbands being lost on the war, right? So the whole process was very participatory, it was very collaborative. They had politicians, but you're an MP, yes, based in Nairobi, but when you go to the ground, you sit on the grass with everybody. There were no high tables, everything was being done in the bush. So it was very successful. So now we've developed now the Warriors to Peace Guidance Project Initiative, or WPGI. And so we were funded by USAID to sort of develop this model and to actually test it. And so the idea was that to be able to train local peace guardians. So these are mainly people who are involved at the community level, alongside the professionals from these warring communities. And the idea was to equip them with the skills and the techniques to be able to mediate conflicts, right? So instead of relying on the police or relying on the government or somebody else from outside, these people will actually be equipped with all the tools and techniques to be able to respond to the conflicts themselves. And the idea was also, to have the professionals, so there are people who are involved in other professions, but the primary mandate was that you have to be involved in responding to conflicts in your own region. Because the other thing, as you probably know, the dynamics is that, professionals working in the cities, they actually fund some of the violence, you know, send Pesa through M-Pesa or something, facilitate some of those conflicts. So the idea was that you have to train all these professionals to know that responsibility lies at them because they are the ones who call the shots. So, you know, one famous quote, you know, during the process was that the people of Laikipia always say was that the people from Nairobi started the caravan. They initiated the whole process. And then the NGOs and the government followed, right? So the idea is sons and daughters taking the center stage in terms of responding to conflicts, but also building now more sustainable peace going forward, right? So now the whole goal of the Warriors to Peace Guardians is, of course, to eradicate intertribal conflict through different ways. So one of them, of course, is the Peace Caravan approach, where as professionals, I team with my Samburu friends, with my Tugen friends, with my Turkana friends, and we go out as a group and, you know, preach the message of peace as professionals together, right? And then the other one is the idea of training and capacity building. We know that you don't have the tools and the expertise, and this is where MBBI is very critical in, because there are people who have experiences elsewhere. You know, Lisa comes in with her experiences from Northern Ireland. Somebody else comes in from the experiences in Asia or wherever. And then you're able to equip these people with all the skills, the tools, and the techniques that they need to actually be able to resolve conflicts. And I think that for me, the critical part, and I want to say here for me, is the idea of communication and to facilitate dialogue, you know, be able to bring people together. That for a long time has been very difficult because we rely mainly on government coming in, and most of the times it's forceful disarmament, forceful punishment, you know. But here is now having that process where people are actually able to dialogue, right, to talk and to come together. So this process was, for example, for the first time, some Samburu women said, this is actually the first time that I'm standing next to a Pokota. I've never come close to this, and I never knew that we actually have a lot of things in common, right? And then, of course, the Warriors Project, this is mainly looking at now more development kind of projects, right? So that is peace dividends. It's not just about peace, it's also about some projects where the people who have decided to do that, their tools are able to develop themselves. And then, of course, the evolution of peace, so that, you know, going all the way to the grassroots level. So, just a summary of the Warriors to Peace Guidance Initiative is to be able to promote sustainable, peaceful coexistence between the pastoralists by facilitating and coordinating the development of their capacities to resolve peace and conflict. So I want to talk about this picture for a minute. The gentleman that you're seeing on the bike is Sikuku, who is one of our peace guardians. So this is a gentleman who we trained. But before, you know, before the caravan, he used to be a warrior. He used to raid, and then he was involved a lot in the Laikipia Peace Caravan. And then after that, he said, now because I want to be able to continue, because I've seen the fruits of peace. Now I have developed. I have my own farm. My animals are growing. He decided to sell off some of his animals and buy this motorcycle, which he uses to go around and to be able to preach peace, but also to respond when there are any disagreements in the community. So he's been very much trusted in terms of being able to respond to some of those conflicts. So this is the whole idea with the Warriors to Peace Guardians. And there are different examples of people from the Pokot side. There are teachers who are known to be, you know, the sort of, in case of anything, they are called upon. And this is the whole idea, that you have people who are actually on the ground responding to disputes, but also building peace for long term. So let's continue, Lisa. And then also, so I think, so during the process also, you know, with this research, we were able to get the needs of the people directly. This also is my favorite picture on the left of Mamamani. This is a very popular lady if you go to Laikipia. And Mamamani was very vocal during the Peace Caravan. So she's one of the women who for the first time were able to be given the platform to speak. And then she also continues to go around, preach peace. And during the process when we met her, she actually said that for us, we are now living together in harmony. She's a Samburu. She said we're living together with our neighbors. But what is going to happen is we are peaceful, but our neighboring counties are not, right? So do something about Baringo. We need the same skills that you brought to us. We need the people in Baringo to be trained as mediators, as peace builders, so that it does not spill over to our counties, because either way it will spill over, because whatever happens there, you know the nature of the conflicts in these regions, that they are very, you know, the ripple effect is unimaginable, right? So she continues to do that, and let's move now to some of the things that came out. This is a word cloud that was developed by Laura Vika, who was here, I think, early this year. She's a research student from Germany. And she also did the same thing, looking at the Laikipia Peace Caravan, looking at what you have achieved as MBBI. And these are some of the common issues that are coming out when we're talking about, you know, the region, the pastoralists, and the common issues, you know, talking about the issues of conflicts, talking about the main actors, you know, the communities involved, the causes. You look at resource-based conflicts, pasture animals, right? There's even the British issues, you know about the conservancies. So these are all the issues that were identified by the communities and continue to be identified. So even as you work on other issues, these are some of the areas that we'll continue to focus on, because they are still there. And also just to mention, because just for this audience, is that you see pastoralists raised a lot here, pastoralism, cattle, livestock, and oftentimes a lot of people who come from outside don't understand this livelihood, this lifestyle, right? People call it lifestyle, but it's actually a viable livelihood that these people will tell you that all we need is the support to be able to produce better and to improve ourselves. But you cannot come in as government who doesn't understand the way things work or the way our lifestyle is and start causing conflict. So I just wanted to highlight that. So let's go to what came out of this initiative. But and to say that we're able to train 63 peace guardians. So these are local people who are going to respond to any sort of conflicts. And they were trained on a number of issues. Of course, mediation is one of them, but the idea of community dialogue, understood that people need to be able to talk and to have a space to express themselves. The idea of facilitation, so how do you facilitate a mediation process? Those are some of the things that they were trained in, but they were not conversant with before. And then, of course, the idea of network of cooperation was also very critical, that these people now were connected to each other. They meet often, they talk often, they are part of the peace committees, you know, they're involved in one way or another. When there are other peace caravans, they are part of it, you know, because they have the experiences from the other issue, from the other caravans that they've had. And then also the idea of, you know, intercommunity and interethnic cooperation. So over time, you know, for this period of time, you hear there's a lot of interactions, there's a lot of intermarriages between the communities, which was not happening before. So, and cooperation in general, you know, development, advocacy in terms of pushing for resources from the county government, because now they have a voice, they have been trained on how to be able to communicate and to issue their challenges. So that is Laikipia. Just to maybe go briefly to, oh, sorry, there's one more slide. These are just sort of direct quotations, mainly from Laura's research recently, that very interesting what comes out of this process. Just read some of them. It says, for example, first, the processes of peace have been taken over powerfully by the locals since the peace caravan make their activities. So you see the emphasis there on the locals, right? So the main actors, as you asked, are the communities who have been in conflicts. That are the Pokot, Samburu community. At the time, we were the biggest actors. So So you can see that communities are taking the center stage in terms of responding to peace and mediating conflicts, rather than them expecting somebody from outside. And just one last one here, an NGO said that the locals need to be the key to any solution, right? The people must be most impacted by the violence need to be a part of the solution. There's absolutely no question in our minds that any process that addresses people who are impacted by the conflict must engage them in the process of resolving it. So this is the whole idea, and this is the beauty with MBBI, that people who are locally impacted by conflicts are at the center. They are the driver's seat. All MBBI does is to give them the tools to be able to address their own challenges. Now let's go to Baringo, I think. Yes, so as I told you, Mamamani, one of the things she said was that we are now living peacefully. We want the same for our brothers on the other side of Baringo. And you, I think I see most of you are Kenyans here, but Baringo is still an epicenter of a lot of the cattle rustling incidences. But we did the same thing in Baringo, where we trained a number of people, looking at professionals still, and then going, you know, particularly those who are involved in Laikipia, they were now became trainers, right? So trainers of trainers. And of course, MBBI international team was part of the process. And just maybe to quickly go through the outcomes, I see, I hope we are still in time. Yeah, so this process involved, because as you know, Baringo was a new territory, there's still ongoing conflicts. It's not like Laikipia where after the Kanampiu massacre, a process happened where they were a bit peaceful. This is where now people are not even talking to each other. So the first incident was to be able to bring the Pokots, the Marakwet, the Tugen and the Ilchamus to bond and to know each other, right? So we got the professionals together in Nakuru, we went to Marikat, and the idea was for them to bond, to understand each other. And then now they were trained on mediation, right? And on in terms of them responding to the conflicts in their own region, right? And they were coached. So the outcome was that 77 members were trained on the same topics that I've mentioned: peace building, mediation, you know, facilitation, community dialogue, and also to be able to create an intercommunity cross-community network. Let's go to the next slide. Over the course of this project, so 2015 to around 2017, 2016, some of the things that, and I want to underscore this to urge still promoting the idea of local solutions, right? So this was a one-year project, but within that period, there were reduced cases of cattle rustling, right? So this time it was now the people who were trained who are responding to conflicts. In case of any raids, they are the ones who their friends on the other tribe called them and said, you know, that we've seen the cattle here, and they would go and negotiate and mediate on behalf of their communities, and the cattle will be returned. So there was a significant reduction in the, you know, in the cattle raiding incidences. Gunshots went low during that period. There was a lot of inter-community cooperation, you know, relations with the security forces. There was a lot of freedom of movement. You know, this was the first time, you know, the markets were opened, the roads were opened, you know, because, you know, sometimes they close the roads because for defense, right? To avoid other people from crossing, or as a barrier, so that you keep maintaining this tension within yourselves. And then friendships. I think you know, having people know each other as you know people who are doing their farms or any other thing, and then they're able to generate this kind of friendship was something that, you know, it was not common, but now it became very common during this process. And people still maintain, they still have their WhatsApp groups. They still talk to each other from time to time. They report incidences. So there is that cooperation and communication, right? Some schools reopened, which had closed for some time because of insecurity incidences. So I want to underscore here that within a very short time, a lot of efforts were seen. But you see, this was just a project that was supported mainly from people who are the normal donor project. So my belief is if it continued for another 3-4 years, a lot of these things would be more sustained and more sustainable. So let's move to the last slide. So these are some of the things that came out of that. As a peace guardian, I saw our location Arabal, where bandits from Pokot community used to shoot on anyone on site. Bandits these days wait for straying livestock and take them away without shooting. So the same thing, that the guns were silenced for a moment. The primary school, which is at the center, now has children from both communities after the communities decided to embrace peace. Yeah, the idea of common sharing of schools was also very much underscored in Laikipia. And in fact, during the Caravan, one of the agreements was development of an Amani school where everybody, all the children from the warring groups would come together and they would study. Even our cows are eating grass in some places where we were not going a long time ago. So there is that access to some of the resources that never existed before, right? So of course, probably the situation has changed, but just to say that this is very critical at such a short time, okay? Now, let's go back to Laikipia. As I mentioned to you, the people of Laikipia said they were more at peace with each other. There was no active cattle riding or conflict, but now they wanted to be more trained in mediation and other aspects such as resource mobilization, fundraising. And so we went back to Laikipia. Unfortunately, just want to say from here, this project never took off because of a lack of a political will. I'm just going to state it here. But the idea was that the people of Laikipia said, for us, we want to be able to train others. So some of them, because there are people who have been involved in the process for a long time, they said we want to even to go as far as Isiolo, as Baringo, the neighboring communities, Samburu, to be able to train the other peace guardians on peace building. So there was that element, and MBBI was coming to come in. And then Gong Hills Rotary Club, we partnered with them to do the aspect of breed improvements, because the pastoralists in Laikipia said, particularly, I just want to say, particularly the Pokot, the Samburu, and the Ilchamus, right? They say they wanted more, not Ilchamus, sorry, Tugen. They wanted their breeds to be more developed, not the Kawaida pastoralist breeds, right? Because their counterparts, the Kikuyu, on the other hand, they had better breeds, which had more, more milk, and they were not mobile. They were, they were a bit more, they were more settled in such sense. So we did a proposal to Rotary International, and we got approved. And the project was supposed to start last year, but it stopped, and it has since been cancelled because of the political situation in Laikipia. So it could not continue. But for me, I see this as a very good project that comes as a result of peace. This is what you're calling the peace dividend. The people now have, they are enjoying the peace. Now development needs to take off and to follow. And then they need to continue the work of peace, because it's never ending, by taking their skills and utilizing it by resolving disputes even with their neighboring counties. But unfortunately, it didn't take off, and this is it really pains. It's taken us a long time to even be able to communicate with the communities that we are unable to continue with this project. But we are hopeful that through other means that the people of Laikipia West will come to enjoy the fruits of this, because they have worked for peace, and now it's time for them to enjoy by their breeds being improved, by their pasture being more managed properly, and developed. So I'll stop at that. I'll allow Lisa now to talk about, I'm sorry, we've gone past the time, to talk about our team, and then I think we'll wrap up from there.
I'll be very speedy, I promise. The project that Dorina was just speaking about, this was one of our trips to Rumarudi when we were trying to kick it off. I think it was a really good learning experience for us, and we will find a way to make it happen. So we'll find a way to pull more will behind it. So the work she was describing, I think, is a really good way forward and to build on what we've already been doing. So that's our team, our current team. And then finally, the work we've been doing in Kenya is really globally recognized. There's our very own Dorina Pret receiving the award for the MBBI Peacebuilder of the Year in 2019, and that was in Bali, I think maybe Ubud in Bali. And there's our president, Prapasenko Renarayan, and I'm not really sure who the other gentleman is, but there they all are at an international conference giving Dorina her award in recognition. MBBI in Kenya and in other countries, but in Kenya, continue to influence policy and practice around peace building and pastoralist communities through work with Frontiers Counties Development, of which Dorina is a part, Frontiers Counties Development Council and other stakeholders. So they're engaged and dialogue is going on between our organization and others there. MBBI have worked with Garissa University to establish the Institute for Peace and Security Studies, and also MBBI have sponsored 24 ward administrations to study peace building. So we're active, we're engaged, we're looking forward to do more work in Kenya, and hope you all will keep up with what we're doing and maybe help us collaborate, support the work, and join us in the work. Finally, our last task for this hour was to talk to people about joining us. You can visit our website, which is, I think, underneath that picture. I hope I can't see it because of my video screen. And we're going to show you a very quick, short video about joining MBBI and the kind of work. And there's opportunities for people from Kenya to join teams all over the world as well, and to help bring the best of Kenyan mediation practices to other people around the world. So I think that's something that should really be remembered by everyone, that, you know, Kenya has a lot to offer other countries in peace building. I know it from having been down there. So I hope people maybe think about that and maybe find a working group or a country you'd be interested in contributing to. So with all of that said, I'm going to play this quick video and then we'll hand over. And it's only a minute and a bit, so I promise it's no more than 2.
Everyone has a role as a peace builder. At Mediators Beyond Borders International, we equip people at different levels of society. Our members make this work possible. By joining Mediators Beyond Borders International, you become a part of making this work sustainable, responsive, and innovative. We are supporting you in building professional skills, connecting with global networks, joining a project or initiating your own, offering discounted trainings. Our peace builders come from all walks of life: journalists, students, doctors, communicators, accountants, engineers, artists, educators, lawyers. All of you have essential skills that make you a change maker. If you believe in our global peace vision, can make a small investment in you and in us, and have the capacity to share your skills, join our global community today, and you'll have a voice in building a more peace-able world. Join us today.
Okay, we'll hand over our apologies for running a bit longer than we should have. And thank you very much. We were delighted to share today. Thank you.
Over to you, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa and Dorina. I take this opportunity to say we are so delighted, we are so privileged to have listened to very passionate speakers this evening, and to a wonderful Dorina, who is award-winning peace builder
I don't know whether to call you Peace Caravan. You know, you have I've listened, and I'm like, maybe the mediation I'm doing in the courts is not enough. I need to go to the community. I sit under the tree. I'm just looking at the tree, and I'm like, wow, I just need to be there. And you know, it's like you're making us whatever we have been learning to be so theoretical. We need to get to the ground. So I'm one of them who is joining. I'm joining MBBI, and I thank you so much because you have given us institutions that we actually, I sometimes I peruse the net and I see them, but now you're us. You have told us about these networks, and we need to look at MBBI in a different light from today. Yeah, because all of us as mediators, I'm calling for each one of us to join this group and to become trainers in mediation and peace building. We have to start a caravan from here. So again, because of time, I just want to ask each one of us to clap silently like this for this team who has given us the very best. You have actually poured yourself out, and we want to say thank you so much. Right. Then now, because of time, we want us to close with a word of prayer in the national anthem, not in Kenya. I'll do it in English. The last stanza, sorry, the first one. O God of all creation, bless this our land and nation. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Plenty be found within our borders. Amen. And with that, I will now take back to Lisa so that she can end the session.
Thank you very, very much, Christine, and everyone here. Wish you all the best on the week ahead. I looked at the program today. It looks amazing. So I might be popping in if I'm able to, because I'd really like to hear some of the speakers ahead. So I hope to see some of you there. And thanks again. Doreen and I were delighted to be asked. So you know where we are. So be happy to get in touch with either one of us. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. I hope you enjoy the next session. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye. The next session is at 6, so you can join. Bye for now.
Bye.